Game of the year means game of this year, and man, are there a lot of other games this year, and last year, and the year before. And on top of that, every year there's like 10 Game of the Years anyway. A bunch of different people did give a bunch of different Game of the Year. Sometimes it's just hard to know which ones to go back to. Hi folks, it's Falcon. Join the 1% Club and get all the unhinged stuff every weekend. Today on gameranx, 10 Game of the Year games that are still worth playing. At number 10, it's Red Dead Redemption. While 2018's Red Dead 2 remains the game everyone is still collectively obsessing over, the 2010 original almost feels overlooked. It wasn't at the time, of course. It swept the Game Awards, got Game of the Year at the Developer's Choice, at the predecessor of the Game Awards called the Spike Video Game Awards, Entertainment Weekly, Game Informer, GameSpy, GamesRadar, The Guardian, Kotaku, EGM. If your local paper was still operating in that year, maybe they did it too, I don't know. Rockstar cleaned house with it, and no, it's not as technically impressive as the sequel, but the original is an excellent game despite being over 15 years old. If anything, I think it's kind of the more playable one these days, depending on what you're looking for. The original is a much more focused game with a control scheme that isn't ambitious in the way the second is. It's more responsive, you generally move quicker, a more straightforward story with a clear goal from the start. You can wrap the whole thing up in about 20 hours. It's less of a time commitment, and it may not impress you, but it was one of the best looking games of its day. The facial expressions and that little twinkle John Marston head in his eye made the game feel cinematic in a way no other open world game had accomplished at that point. The shooting was greatly improved over GTA 4. In some ways, it's actually better than what we got in the game that came after it, GTA 5. The shooting's just a lot more intense. Each shot has more weight to it, and the Euphoria physics engine stuff never looked better. There are some meandering parts, but if you're complaining about a Red Dead game meandering, you're not doing it about the first one, or you're a fool. But it all comes together for the ending, which remains to be one of the ballsiest things Rockstar's ever done. They made the whole final chapter of the game set on a boring farm with John's family, and they were able to make it not just tolerable, but riveting. It was a bold step forward for the entire medium of video games, and I don't think RDR gets enough credit for how much of an effect it had on the industry as a whole. Also, you know, it might be controversial, but I like it better than the second one. I'm more impressed by the second one. The second one certainly is technically better, but I don't like it as much. I like it, not as much as the first one, though. The first one's better. It's just me. I'm not expecting everybody to agree, but I prefer the story any day. I prefer the gameplay any day. I prefer the open world map any day. I don't need really deliberate movement physics and the ability to do everything I think of. It's a cowboy game. I'm not saying this to discredit the second one or even say that I don't really like it. I very much do, but I think that the first one's better. And we just straight up would not have narrative games that are unafraid to take their time in the way like Guardians of the Galaxy or 007 First Light had, without this game taking that kind of narrative leap in that setting. Yeah, there are stories in games that took their time more than this one, but this one's, it's a game of the scale that it is telling what is not a blockbuster story, and yet it is. It's just such a good game. I can't bring myself to complain a whole lot when they re-release it, even though it was full price. Although that did, I'm not gonna say it didn't piss me off. It did piss me off, but did I play it again? Yeah, I did.
Get 'em, boys! Everybody, take cover! In that shed!
Another thing that pisses me off is how many shorts they put on the YouTube homepage now. I don't get our videos from my account. I get shorts. And that's why I'm asking you to turn on notifications, because it's probably the easiest way to see all of our new videos as they come out. It's doing us a big favor. We hope it helps you see some stuff you want to see. Thanks a ton. I won't bug you with it anymore. Let's get back to the video. And number 9, it's Doom 2016, which was frickin' 10 years ago at this point. That's crazy to say. It's hard for me to say, like, they brought the classic shooter franchise to the modern era, because while they did do that, and they did update the mechanics of it, it also single-handedly revived the entire boomer shooter genre. Dusk came out in 2018, Ion Fury came out in 2019. Pretty much every major, notable, or remotely memorable old-school shooter came out after Doom 2016, and in general, the FPS landscape has changed really significantly after this game launched. It had an effect, to say the least. Before Doom, the landscape was dominated by slow, chunky military shooters, and I guess that's kinda true. There's still Call of Duties. They still inexplicably top the charts despite being of the quality of Black Ops 7, although that one didn't really top the charts. But there's generally a lot more diversity to shooters nowadays. They're slower paced, or they're faster paced. They're chaotic or they're deliberate. Linear, non-linear. There's crazy stuff in the shooter landscape. The old ways are back in both mainstream and indie, and I think we have Doom at least partially to thank for that, because it's just a really solid game that was a big breath of fresh air. With every other game you had to sit through an hour of cutscenes to get the action, here the Doom guy wakes up, picks up a gun, and that's it. It's time. It's time to Doom. They're smart enough to tease you with lore without making the game an exposition dump. It's got a story that's just light enough to get out of the way, but there's enough there to get a funny scene of Doom guys smashing something some once in a while, you know? It's a perfect balance that almost no game gets right, including its sequels. Not to say it's the best game in the modern Doom trilogy, I'm not sure on that one. I think Eternal might be that. But it's the one that brought in the innovations and deserves a ton of respect for bucking a bunch of trends and making a big budget FPS that is unapologetically Doom. And number 8, Batman Arkham Asylum. Cannot be understated how improbable this game was when it came out. A licensed superhero game from a studio that nobody had ever heard of, managed to not be good, but be incredible. So incredible that it revolutionized not one, but 2 gameplay mechanics that went on to influence the entire games industry for a solid decade. Arkham Asylum is a game that felt like frickin' magic in 2009. And while it may feel kinda limited and small compared to its open world sequels, the original is a potent little game that packs a ton of stuff into a relatively short length. I distinctly remember playing the demo for this one and just being blown the hell away. It's a feeling you rarely get with games, especially if you're a jaded bastard. I've played everything. I've been playing video games since the 1980s. But you think you've seen it all, and a game like Arkham Asylum comes around and upends all of it. The free-flow, counter-based combat makes you feel like Batman in a way no other game had ever gotten close to. And this was the game that all but created the Predator-style stealth game. Stealth in almost every game before Arkham forced you to play it slow, careful, and methodical. Stealth games by nature could be really boring, because a lot of the stealth experience back in those days was just passively waiting. But Batman doesn't do that. You're the Predator, they're the prey.
The direct approach is suicide. I need to be smart. Find a different way past them.
So it's that really coming this way.
Both the combat and the stealth were fun and thematically appropriate for the character of Batman. The straightforward story about a breakout, the titular asylum, means we got a bunch of villains with relatively small area. It's structured like Devil May Cry without the levels, or you might even go so far to say as it has some Metroidvania elements, and that interconnectivity and the strong sense of place makes the asylum one of the most memorable video game locations of all time, period. Don't argue with me on that. The lack of an open world actually works in this game's favor. It makes it feel distinct compared to the sequels. It's also a really surprising game a lot of the time. You can see Kojima influences all over the place, especially the many ways the developers mess with your expectations or throw wild gameplay curveballs at you in the blink of an eye. Arkham Asylum remains for many the definitive Batman game. It's crazy how well this game still holds up, despite coming out 17 years ago. Yeah, in a couple years it's going to be 2 decades old. It's almost old enough to vote and still feels modern. That just goes to show you how incredibly influential this game was and is to this very day.
How do you like my puppet? What say we cut him down?
And number 7 is Diablo 2, going back to the year 2000 with this one. This game remains shockingly playable even today. I know I get a little heat whenever I talk about Diablo 3 or 4 because I always compare it to Diablo 2, which is just a better game. I'm not saying 3 or 4 are bad, and I frankly don't think they're bad. I think they're actually good. They're just not exciting to me compared to Diablo 2. However, it only got one Game of the Year back in 2000 from DICE, which says less about the quality of the game itself and more about how competitive the year 2000 was for games. A little project called Deus Ex launched that year and swept the awards alongside Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Remember that one? Funny enough, I think Diablo 2 kind of holds up better than at least Deus Ex, arguably Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Yes, they have more or less used the same gameplay formula for the remakes of those games. They're quite a bit smoother, actually, if you go back and compare them. Deus Ex is a classic. Doesn't completely hold up. It is very much a product of its time. In a way, Diablo doesn't really feel like it is. And yeah, the modern 3D remaster does a lot to improve the visuals of Diablo 2, but it's also the gold standard of retaining everything about the original game, just updating it for the modern age. You can seamlessly switch between the OG graphics and the new HD stuff with the press of a button too, and while the 3D models are a lot sharper than the old renders, in every way that counts, the new Diablo 2 is the same as the old one and remains as compulsively playable as the original. It also helps that Diablo 3 and 4 take the series in very different directions, so this game still manages to stand on its own pretty easily. It's the ARPG model that games that aren't pursuing a live service model tend to follow today. If a game is top-down and you slash monsters, you better believe it's inspired by Diablo 2. Not Diablo 1, which is a great game, but the truly influential one is Diablo 2, with its quests and its architecture in terms of the act structure and everything. It has an abundance of loot, a lot of iconic classes. It's still the ARPG to beat, despite being 26 years old. It's positively ancient, and yet it is beyond fun to play, even now. And number 6 is Portal 2. Half-Life 2 swept the Game Awards in 2004 for a good reason. Great game that kids today are still going back and enjoying. Even that far back, that game has the patented Valve polish. It's a roller coaster ride of a game carefully designed from the bottom up to give players a campaign that's constantly surprising and mixing things up. It's the sort of quality game design that the developers have been trying to replicate for years. A lot have tried and failed to make the next Half-Life, and then in 2011, Valve came back to show the world how it was done with Portal 2. This is the full-priced standalone sequel to the breakout hit Portal, which was originally packaged in the orange box with Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Team Fortress 2. Quite a lineup, 3 legendary games and all of them 2s, except for Portal. But making a follow-up to Portal was actually pretty risky. How could they keep things interesting for a whole campaign? Well, I guess it turns out if you're Valve, it's not really that much of a mystery. It's a puzzle game essentially designed like Half-Life 2. It's made to be entertaining first and foremost. The puzzle design engaging without being frustrating. They're constantly refreshing things and introducing new mechanics to keep your brain working. Between the test chambers, they're making you laugh with some of the best comedy ever in a game. It still all holds up quite well, might I add, and makes you wish that Valve hadn't completely given up on single-player games after Portal 2. All we got after this was Half-Life Alyx, which is a VR exclusive, and, well, I would like it better if it wasn't. I mean, granted, it's a really good game. Probably another Game of the Year contender. Same can be said of Half-Life 2 and Portal 2, and basically everything Valve's ever done, but I think Portal 2 is a game where they took a really big risk and landed it really hard. Doubling down on a 3-hour single gimmick puzzle game sounds like it should have been a disaster. Hell, a comedy game alone should have been a disaster. Usually those are not good. But it's funny, it's full of clever design, it's just an all-around great game.
It's just a data point. If it makes you feel any better. Science has now validated your birth mother's decision to abandon you on a doorstep.
And number 5 is XCOM Enemy Unknown. In 2012, the turn-based tactical strategy genre was pretty much dead. You'd get the odd genre holdout every once in a while and some stubborn Eastern Europeans or Japanese studios, but in terms of mainstream eyeballs, the dream was dead. We were smack dab in the middle of the 7th console generation, the Xbox 360 generation, where the accepted knowledge was to make games as console-friendly as possible. It was either first person or it was third person, and either way it was a shooter, and for the love of God, if there's going to be tactics, it gotta be real time. So of course Fireaxis looks at that gaming landscape and decides a big budget, unabashedly turn-based tactical strategy game based on a long forgotten by the mainstream franchise was the way to go.
What the hell is going on?
Delta 3 is down!
It'd basically be like if Bethesda decided to make Fallout 3 the same as Fallout 1 and 2, like a top-down hardcore CRPG. I'm gonna argue that Bethesda probably would have failed at that, and Fireaxis easily could have failed at this. It's a crazy idea. Could have gone down harder than the Hindenburg, but it didn't, and a big reason is because how intelligently designed the game ended up being. This wasn't just them recreating dry as a bone XCOM gameplay from the 90s. It was a new type of tactics game. It's highly challenging, but also accessible and appealing. It's 3D and flashy with cinematic camera angles. The presentation was top-notch at the time, and it remains quite strong even now. Simplifying things down to a simple 2-action system with cover and percentage-based chances just made sense. It's a system that has a lot of complexity built in, but it's also immediately understandable. High cover is better than low cover, flanked enemies are easy to hit, moving farther takes more action points, it's all intuitive and elegant in terms of design. You see that all over the place with XCOM. These days, tactical strategy games are all over the place. The genre is pretty revived, basically, and a lot of these games take direct inspiration from Enemy Unknown. I'm not saying XCOM completely saved the genre, because it wasn't. There were other games that helped pretty significantly, and it wasn't like the genre was gone either. Just in terms of mainstream acceptance, XCOM is a game that proved to everybody that these are viable games. They just need proper production values on top of a solid game designed underneath it. At number 4 is Metroid Prime. It's the game nobody thought would work. How do you retain the feeling of a Metroid game in first person? Seemed like an impossible task doomed to failure, but developer Retro Studios managed to get it exactly right on their first try. They got it so right, in fact, that they haven't been able to hit the mark ever since. Not because the later games are bad, they're all quite good in their own right, even the most recent one. It's got its problems, but it's still pretty good. It's just that Metroid Prime got so much right that it's just basically impossible to meet that standard. Came out in 2002, 2 years before Half-Life 2, 2 years after Deus Ex. It feels like a game out of time, and in many ways it is. There's just nothing else quite like it other than the sequels, and they don't quite capture it. I don't know how it manages to somehow thread the needle of being a satisfying exploration game in first person and be a Metroid game. Like, imagine anybody else trying to put something as weird as the morph ball in a game like this. It would have felt terrible, and they nailed it. They completely nailed it. The shooting could have sucked. The game could have been a straightforward series of corridors with no exploration. Could have been more of an FPS than a Metroid game, but they've just found this perfect flow of exploration, unlocking new equipment that allows you to progress further, getting lost, hitting the eureka moment, finally realizing what you're supposed to do, and even the bosses are fun. They throw new gimmicks exclusive to this game, like the scan visor, which was used just enough to give you information about the world and clues without feeling like you're being forced to stop and scan everything every 5 seconds. Now, part of the reason this game feels so modern is because of the remake. The more modern twin stick controls are a big improvement to how it originally worked on the GameCube, but that's the only major thing it's crazy, honestly, how, yes, it does look better, but that original game looks nearly as good. the vast majority of that game is exactly the same as it was 25 years ago. It's such a unique and near perfect vision for a game. It barely feels half as old as it is. It easily could have come out 10 years ago with the twin stick controls, obviously. It's one of those games that feels so unique and good that nobody else even tried replicating it because they knew they wouldn't. If the game's own developers can't make a better sequel, why would somebody else be able to make a better game like that? And number 3, Shadow the Colossus. From director Fumito Ueda and the tragically defunct Sony Japan studio came one of the boldest creative visions of the 2000s. Everybody knows what this game's about. They probably all know all the twist themes and endings and all that. It's really memorable, brilliant premise they pull off in spectacular fashion. And while the original game very much shows its age, this was a PlayStation 2 game, but it still has this bleak and memorable art style that holds up. Of course, there's also the 2018 remake if you absolutely need HD visuals. Not to insult Blue Point's work at all, because it does look fantastic, but it does feel a little less barren and apocalyptic. It's a personal taste thing. There's times where I think the Blue Point one is better, times I think the original gets things across better. I don't know. However you like it, I'll bet you probably like it on some level. Most people at least have some degree of reverence for this game. I think one of the things it doesn't come off and about quite as much is how this game went on to inspire other similarly meditative experiences. You're not meant to rush this game. You're meant to take your time. Controls are somewhat unresponsive and very deliberate. Your horse kind of has a mind of its own, you know? I see a lot of Red Dead 2 and Shadow the Colossus. The way the game forces you to engage in long, drawn-out horse rides, the ways it lets you interact with nature in ways that are just totally pointless. But it makes the world feel more real. A lot of games have attempted to borrow the ideas that are present there, but few have done anything as interesting with them. What makes this game work so well is how it combines the quietly tragic tone with the moments of exhilaration and excitement, which are all reflected in the score really well too. The music really sweeps majestically as you're taking a Colossus down, but then it settles back into slower and mournful stuff. Brilliant game. Makes you think without saying anything. Moving on to number 2, it's Dishonored. Not Arkane's first game, but it's probably their best. The original Dishonored, released in 2012, remains one of the high watermarks of the immersive sim genre. Instead of forcing you into any particular playstyle, it gave you a bunch of stuff and encouraged you to engage with the game how you wanted to. You could slaughter everybody on the map, you could avoid detection, and not kill a single soul. Depending on what you did, the game would adapt to your order or chaos scores. It's more of a built-in morality system. It was certainly not perfect in any way, but it was a hell of a lot more engaging than a lot of the binary choices of something like BioShock. Even though BioShock has a lot going for it, don't get me wrong. Dishonored's just doing something ultimately more open-ended and rewarding, at least in terms of design.
Thy hands not be restless. Reveal yourself. Got you now. Get behind him.
Each level is like an interconnected puzzle box that you can engage with or completely ignore at your own leisure. There's nothing stopping you from killing everything in sight, playing deliberately and carefully, or just trying to get past everything in a speedrunning fashion. It's crazy, all the stuff that can be done in this game. And having options is great in a game like this, where each level is so meticulously crafted and complex. It can be slightly less clever than, say, Dishonored 2. There's some more flashy and clever stuff in that game, but I think the first game overall is the better product, especially if you factor in the first game's DLCs, which are also insane. It's a little creaky in a few spots, not as jaw-droppingly stunning as the second game is, but man, is it the best immersive sim. I mean, Lady Boyle's Last Party, that mission alone deserves Game of the Year.
I'm getting peckish. We should...
And finally, I got Unreal Tournament for you, going way back to 1999. This game is so overlooked today that there's no legal way to buy it. The name Unreal is in use as the video game engine, but back in the late 90s, it was a video game series. The original Unreal Tournament was a graphical tour de force at the time, but the quasi-sequel Unreal Tournament is where the series really thrived. It really shows how much gaming has changed in the past 25 years, both for good and for bad. There's so many modes, features, and maps in the original game, just an overwhelming amount of content right out of the box, and fans and players were adding stuff to it constantly with new maps and mods entirely crafted by the game's massive community. At that time, playing a multiplayer game was about being part of a community. It didn't feel like you were just a consumer being sold to at every frickin' turn. They weren't doing FOMO or battle passes or rotating skins or seasons. The game was just there and you played it because it was good, and the community liked it and worked on the game, either by getting better or by making content for the game. It's not automatically better, might I add, because a lot of stuff didn't pass the test of time, I'll say. A lot of the maps and modes went completely unplayed for the vast majority of players. A lot of the stuff that people made sucked, but the fact is all that stuff was here. You could always jump into a bot match with a friend and have some fun with this stuff. Even when the game was essentially dead, it's still out there and playable now, despite being practically disavowed by its original developer. I'm certainly not here to rag on modern multiplayer games, because there's great ones out there. I mention the finals all the time. I play the finals multiple times a week. Wonderful game. Uses the Unreal Engine. But Unreal Tournament was just a one-of-a-kind game that deserves some recognition that it doesn't. I mean, certainly it was Game of the Year when it came out, yes, but all of the other games I've mentioned on this list are talked about regularly today. That's the only reason Dishonored isn't number one. I would have put Dishonored at number one easy. I'm a major Dishonored fanbird. It just kills me that Epic is just unable to do anything with the game series that put them on the map in the first place, but I guess they're too busy with islands in Fortnite, just trying to do Roblox in Fortnite. At least Unreal Tournament is out there and made playable by a small but dedicated group of fans. I don't know, what do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, join the 1% Club and get the Falcon Show every weekend. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.